Should we start, Brenda? I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were going to talk again. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Good afternoon. I'm Helaine Blumenthal. I'm Senior Program Manager at Wiki Education, and I'm joined today by three wonderful participants in our Wikipedia student program, and I will introduce them to you. We are joined by Lisbeth, who is a lecturer in the writing program at Georgetown University, Kathleen Sheppard, who is Associate Professor of History at Missouri University of Science and Technology, and Stephanie Turner, who's Professor of English and Rhetorics of Science, Technology, and Culture at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Thank you again to the three of you for graciously joining me today in this panel. Before I pass it over to my co-panelists, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of background about Wiki Education and the Wikipedia student program. Wiki Education is a small nonprofit organization, and our mission, broadly speaking, is to connect the worlds of academia and other knowledge-based institutions with that of Wikipedia. In a nutshell, we attempt to improve Wikipedia's content and to fill in some of its glaring content gaps by engaging subject matter experts and students. We do this chiefly through two different programs, the Wikipedia Student Program, which is what you'll hear about today, and our Wikipedia Scholars and Scientists Program. The former is a simple but powerful concept. Faculty, like those you'll hear from today, have their students contribute to Wikipedia as an assignment in their course. The latter program is one where we run courses in which we train subject matter experts on how to contribute to Wikipedia. The Wikipedia Student Program, or the Wikipedia Assignment, as it's often called, has been running since 2010. In that time, we've worked with about 5,500 courses across 800 colleges and universities in the US and in Canada. We've worked with about 110,000 students, and those students have collectively added over 90 million words to Wikipedia, and they've edited over 120,000 articles. And their work is viewed hundreds of millions of times each semester. About 20% of all new editors to Wikipedia are coming from the Wikipedia student program. Simply put, when given the chance, students can have an immense impact on open knowledge. As one of our instructors put it, the assignment increased my students' self-worth in realizing that they can contribute to society's knowledge at large. The skills students obtained from learning how to contribute to Wikipedia are numerous, from basic research and writing skills to more advanced and complex digital and media literacy skills. But today we're going to talk about the assignment as it relates to open pedagogy and as an open educational resource. Again, as one of our instructors put it best, I think I actually learned as much about Wikipedia as my students. I had never thought about the impact of a freely available encyclopedia that does not require access to a university library or money to get behind paywalls. My students were really excited by the idea that they were making knowledge available to more people, and by the idea that they were writing something that would be read by a lot of people. The Wikipedia assignment is built on the idea of openness, opening up knowledge, opening up access, and opening up spaces to ensure that diverse voices and topics are represented. Students are in a unique position. They have access to information that's behind paywalls for much of the population at large, and they're surrounded by subject matter experts who can guide them in their research and in their writing. You might think that with more than 6 million articles on the English Wikipedia that it's relatively complete. But Wikipedia is still riddled with stark content gaps, and this is especially true, in academic fields and in fields related to historically marginalized populations and subjects that students are often studying in depth. So the students we support are not just simply diversifying Wikipedia's content, but they're also diversifying Wikipedia's editor base. Who produces knowledge is just as important as the knowledge itself. Wikipedia's regular editing community is majority white, male, and Western, whereas about 60% of the students we work with identify as women. And generally speaking, the demographics of the students we support reflect that of academia more generally in the US. And so while we still have a lot of work to do in terms of diversifying who contributes to Wikipedia, these numbers are moving that in the right direction. So to sum up, the Wikipedia assignment enables students to engage in public discourse, and it allows them to become active participants in today's knowledge landscape. In doing so, they help to make the largest online encyclopedia more equitable, more accessible, and ultimately more accurate. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Lisbeth.
Thank you, Helaine. That was great. Hello, my name is Lisbeth Fuisz. I wanted to thank Helaine for organizing this panel. I'm excited for the opportunity to discuss how I've used Wikipedia in my courses and to hear about my colleagues' experiences. I began using Wikipedia assignments in my courses in fall 2016 and have used them every semester since then. Utilizing Wikipedia has had a deep positive impact on my teaching. If you could give me the next slide, please. Thank you. I have found Wikipedia projects to be highly adaptable, fitting well with the goals of the various courses I teach. Since it's an encyclopedia, Wikipedia has topics for every interest and academic subject. I have used Wikipedia in a children's literature course, a kind of standard survey of children's literature in English over the last 2 centuries. I have used it most often and repeatedly in a composition course on books banned and challenged in US schools and libraries. In that course, students examined books that have been caught up in public controversies over the purposes of education and students' rights to information. For example, we've examined recent contestations over the use of children's literature with queer content in schools and libraries. And we've also looked at cases in which school curriculum or ethnic studies programs have been challenged, such as when the Mexican American Studies program in Tucson, Arizona public high schools was shut down in 2012. Currently, I'm using Wikipedia assignments in a Writing for Others course, in which we examine ethical questions around writing in Wikipedia. These are questions that became apparent to me in teaching the other courses. So, for example, it became really clear the underrepresentation or incompleteness of articles about children's books by queer authors, authors of colors, and Indigenous writers. So in that class, I asked students to think about how Wikipedia seeks to democratize knowledge, crowdsourcing content through its many editors, and providing free access to its readers. But we also explore how the encyclopedia is impacted by social justice issues present in the larger US society. So for example, during the pandemic, we talked a lot about the digital divide, like who actually has access to Wikipedia, who has access to the internet. And after studying some of these ethical dimensions of working within English Wikipedia, students bring about more, or at least they hopefully bring about more knowledge equity to the site by filling content gaps by either improving existing articles or creating new articles. What I especially appreciate about Wikipedia assignments is that they offer students authentic writing experiences. Students produce knowledge for real audiences. And to do so, they have to navigate Wikipedia as a discourse community. As a discourse community, Wikipedia has common goals. For example, there are 5 pillars that we look at. As a discourse community, Wikipedia also has participatory mechanisms that students have to learn. There's information exchange that they become familiar with. As a discourse community, Wikipedia also has community-specific genres. So for example, Wikipedia has lots of materials for students if they're writing an article about a book versus like a film, or if they're writing about medical topics, or if they're writing about biology topics. So there's specific genres for different types of Wikipedia articles. Moreover, Wikipedia has a highly specialized terminology. So we spend some time like reading articles about dynamics in Wikipedia, like edit wars and other things, so that students can be prepared to negotiate and navigate Wikipedia. And it also requires a high level of, well, not a high level, but it requires some expertise. So we do, students do take trainings that are provided by the Wiki Education Foundation, like Helaine and her colleagues, that are excellent and really helpful. As part of these courses, we also spend time thinking about sources, building students' informational literacy, their ability to access, evaluate, use, and manage information from a variety of sources. And we also focus on media literacy, the students' ability to understand, interpret, and create media. In this case, they can either create or improve Wikipedia articles. Next slide, please. As such, like one of the key framing concepts for my course is literacy sponsorship. This is a term that I've adapted from Deborah Brandt's definition of sponsors of literacy. She writes, quote, any agents, local or distant, concrete or abstract, to enable, support, teach, and model, as well as recruit, regulate, suppress, or withhold literacy and gain advantage by it in some ways. So students critique Wikipedia as a sponsor of literacy. So we think about the ways in which it does enable access, enable literacy skills or knowledge, but we also think about the ways in which Wikipedia might regulate or withhold access to information as well. And then in generating content for Wikipedia, students also take on the role of sponsors themselves. And as sponsors, as Helaine was sort of talking about with paywalls, I asked students to examine their own privilege in accessing information. We think about, like Helaine was talking about, databases with paywalls. So the students where I teach, are members of a university with a robust literary budget. So we think about, how they can, through Wikipedia, give people access to these resources that they might otherwise not be able to get because they're behind a paywall. Next slide, please. Generally speaking, students report having positive experiences working with Wikipedia. They may still have reservations about Wikipedia as a reliable source of information, but they have a better grasp of its advantages as well as its limitations by the time the courses are done. And I picked two examples here of student reflections that are pretty reflective of generally what students say. I asked students to reflect on their experience at the end of the semester. So for example, student 1 wrote, when writing a typical class essay, you are simply sharing your knowledge with the teacher, someone who already knows the subject. However, with Wikipedia, every internet user has the potential to benefit from your work. As example, the second example is a student who sort of acknowledged both some of the advantages and disadvantages. They wrote, working on this Wikipedia project has made me aware of the website's flaws. And yet this class made me go from being a consumer of information to a creator of information or sponsor of literacy. As a sponsor of literacy, people are going to read what I write and accept it as fact. And that is an incredibly fascinating yet humbling power to wield. So having to write in a public space like Wikipedia ups the stakes for students, but I also think it makes it more meaningful for them. Next slide, please. If you're interested, if you're interested in doing a Wikipedia assignment, I just wanted to assure you that Helaine and her colleagues provide sort of fantastic resources. And there are a lot of actual resources built into the Wikipedia that you may not be aware of as a casual kind of consumer of knowledge on Wikipedia. But there is a dashboard, for example, that each class gets if you enroll your class in Wikipedia. And I'll show you a slide of that in a moment, but each dashboard includes a calendar where the instructor inputs assignments, and you can link out to trainings for students and other information they might need. There are some other key Wikipedia features that I've found really helpful. For example, students have sandboxes where they can draft text and they don't have to actually work on a live article initially. They can practice in the sandbox. There's also something called the talk page, which is so along with each live article, there's also a talk page where editors discuss what the state of the article, what could be added or subtracted. So that's really helpful to students. There is something called an edit summary. So when a student is making a change, or any editor is making a change to Wikipedia, they're asked to explain the reasons for the edit. And I'll talk about that more in a moment. And then again, Wikipedia has lots of handouts and articles about, for example, how to write about women on Wikipedia, or how to write about LGBT plus QIA plus topics. So there is a huge number of resources. Next slide, please. So this is just to give you, I'm sorry, it's a little small, but an example of what the dashboard looks like. You can see on the left-hand side, I've put information about what they need to do. I've linked out to some trainings, and there's obviously a long calendar there by week. At the top, there's some tabs. The third one over says students. So when they click on that, they can see what they've done or what other students have done. They have a username, so there's some privacy that way, but this is publicly available. So all of the work they do in Wikipedia is publicly available. Next slide, please. So this, I think, is all really interesting too. So again, I didn't know any of this until I started working with Wikipedia, but for each article, there's also a view history page. So you can see how the article has changed over time. And so every time an editor makes an edit to a Wikipedia page, it's recorded here. So I've highlighted, for example, what a student, when they've added some information to an article, they've written an edit summary. And for me, who teaches writing, I think this is really important because it asks students to articulate the rhetorical choices they are making as writers, what they've done and why. So there's all these features of Wikipedia that can be adapted and used depending on your topic, I think, in ways that are really interesting. And again, offer students the opportunity to write for real audiences. So thank you very much. I hope you'll consider doing an assignment in Wikipedia.
Thank you, Lisbeth. That was great. I think we're going to take questions at the end. Is that right, Helaine? Okay. I am Kathleen Sheppard. I am at Missouri S&T, Missouri University of Science and Technology. We're a small engineering-focused university in central Missouri. And I'm a humanist. I'm a historian of science. So part of my job is this first word here is engaging my engineering students in historical analysis. And so when I found out about the Wiki Education project, I wanted to jump right in because this is a really great sort of melding of online literacy, of actual transactional work, and then also historical analysis. So I'm going to do something. I'm probably going to make several of the same points that Lisbeth made. But what I like to do is just tell you what I did and why I did it. So I set up a project for students to learn the process of writing through editing Wikipedia. The class, the upper level class that I teach is History of Science. It's a survey from basically Aristotle to today. We cover 4 separate units having to do with history of the cosmos, history of the earth, history of the body, and then history of technology. And I actually added technology when I got to this university because students really wanted to know, how did we start working with things like telescopes kind of stuff. But also what they wanted to know a bit more of that technical information. So I had to really shift how I taught the class from when I was teaching history majors. So part of that had to do with how do I keep them engaged with the material that is not just me lecture, them doing an exam, more lecturing, another exam, more lecturing, and a final paper. And this assignment really is, I made the assignment iterative. So we start with small stakes stuff, and then we move up to larger stakes assignments. And it really keeps them engaged in the process of writing. What I had to come to grips with here is that most of my students, not all of my students are engineering or science majors. I get each semester out of, say, 100 students, I probably have 4 that are history majors. So I have to, be aware that most of my students are not going to need to learn the skill of writing a 15-page argument ever. But what they do need to do is be able to take a bunch of disparate information, distill it down into 500 to 1,000 words. And so what I did is I shifted this assignment so that the most that they're putting in is about 1,000 words into the article. And you can figure out how many words you want your students to do. You can really modulate the assignment to your class and to the skills that your students need. Mine need to know how to communicate well in short bursts. They need to be able to be concise and also learn how to read and then how to write. So we do this process of, Lisbeth showed some of the sort of the dashboard. I'm going to show you several of the individual assignments. One of the first things we do is figure out where the gaps in content are. And students go to Wikipedia articles and they read through articles that I usually give them a list to start to choose from, but really they can choose their own as long as it, of course, goes along with the class. And they find gaps in an article. And what that means is I tell them, read through it, see what questions you have when you're done with the article. And they don't really realize that if they have questions that when they're done reading something, that's actually a gap in the content. So you're really teaching them to become experts in their own field of interest. And so, you sort of tell them, where's the gap? Well, there aren't any. Well, did you have questions at the end? Well, yeah, why didn't they talk about this? What about this? And so they begin to realize that they can pick out those gaps. And then I work with them to find sources in the library. Very few of them, even my upperclassmen, have actually been into the library here or know how to search a library catalog. So I help them to find sources, which ones are reliable, which, ideas are notable. And one thing that we absolutely do is I teach them how to use Google, because even though most of my undergrads are in this quote unquote born digital age, they don't actually know how to use many of the tools that they use on a daily basis. They're not really efficient at it. And so we learn about that. And then we start critically analyzing not just the articles on Wikipedia, but also the sources that they're going to be using. So some of them, sort of find an article or they find a source so they can add to their article. And then they realize whoever started this article actually just completely plagiarized from a source, right, that they found. And again, this does happen because people sort of get on there and they're like, I need to fill in this gap. But then, we learn how to kind of deal with that. And they learn that they can critically reflect on things that they read. And especially as engineers and scientists here at my university who learn sort of, I am going to tell you how this works, and then you're going to do this thing. Very few of them sort of go, why are we even learning about this? And that extends into reading the news, listening to a news source, listening to, a person in position of power, and can I actually critically analyze what they're saying? And my thing too with my students is if you're not interested in what we're doing, you're not going to do the work. They have classes that are 6 hour, the 6 hour credits, and they're spending 20 hours a week working on one class. So if they're not interested in what they're doing for my class, they're going to not do the work, and then they're not going to do very well in the class. So I want them to be interested in it. I want them to get excited about the thing that they get to work on, because I get excited about stuff that I get to work on, and I want them to know what that feels like. So we have Canvas as our learning management system. And so I just set up a separate Wikipedia page in Canvas itself. And I have a link to the dashboard that Lisbeth showed us all. I have a link to a research guide that I put together for my students, which gives them step-by-step instructions on how to find sources and what I want them to look at. And then I go to, I also linked to the actual Wikipedia module that I put together. And so it goes assignment by assignment. And these are basically the assignments that are on the dashboard, but this is how I grade them. Because I want them to be small, very low stakes steps. And I always tell them, if you mess something up on Wikipedia, we can fix it. If you go in and you change a citation and you hit publish and it doesn't work or it messes everything up, you can go in and you can undo it. It's not a big deal. It's fine. So I start off with super low stakes stuff at the beginning. They are this week beginning to draft their article, and that is worth 60 points. And I set up rubrics for that so they know exactly what I'm looking for. And this is the rubric for beginning to draft an article, basically that they have begun their work outside of class before Friday, and then that they are making substantive additions to the article. Every week, Monday and Wednesday, I lecture, and Friday we do Wikipedia so that when they have questions about the system, I can be there to answer them. And also, like Lisbeth talked about, and I know Helaine mentioned this earlier, we are subject matter experts. And so if we're not there to, kind of help guide them along as they're doing it in real time, I feel like we are missing out on an opportunity to connect with students. And I love it. It's selfishly, it's super fun for me to walk around and see what they're doing. And, you know, can I use this source? I'm like, whoa, where'd you find that? And so we sort of compare where we found stuff, and they get really excited and I get excited. So it's really fun to connect with them like that. And I really like it. So part of this is selfish for me because I have a blast. And so they see here in the rubric how I'm going to be grading them. And again, early on, it's very low stakes. And I'll explain kind of sort of how I grade some of this here in just a second. The rubrics, though, were really important for me because many of my students are just learning how to write. So we do smaller assessments along the way. The project itself is 60% of the course grade in total, which is about 600 points. And this helps me to help them build up to the final article, to the presentation that they have to do at the end. And then they do a reflection paper at the end, like, how did you like this? What did you do? What was your process? Because I can't talk to everybody throughout the whole, like at every stage. So I want to know more about their inner thoughts about those things. Also, Canvas has rubrics built in, so it makes them really easy to use. And then the final deliverable for the assignment is the article. That's the really big piece. And by the end, they have to have, as a pair, they work in pairs. As a pair, they have to have added between 500 and 1,000 words to the article. And again, this is really easy to see with what Lisbeth showed with the history, with the view history part of the article, but also in the dashboard, there is this amazing article tool where you can see they color code what people have added. So it's super duper easy to grade. It's gotten easier since a few iterations ago where you did have to go back in and physically do it. So we are happy that Wikipedia heard our cries. But there, you know, and much like what other people have said, and maybe Stephanie's going to say, they added, students really had some interesting experiences here. They got engaged in the material that we were talking about. It's hard to get my students to read 3 pages for an assignment sometimes, but getting them to read a whole book about, you know, Nikola Tesla so that they can write an article, they'll do it. And so they get really engaged with the material. And again, it's this real world transaction. They can see what is happening on Wikipedia live. They can see when somebody comes in and argues with them about what they're doing, how they're graded on how they handle it, according to the pillars and professionalism, but also, you know, access to sources and information. We have to figure out what's reliable and what's notable and what's not. They're having to write unbiased editions. And they're learning online literacy. They're learning that they can't just throw anything up online that they want to without consequences. And then I've got a whole bunch of reactions here from students wondering, why don't more professors do this? Because it's fun, right? And it helps them to learn the steps of writing without a huge deliverable at the end. One student, at first I just wanted to write a 10-page paper, but this was way more fun. And I do have to say that public shame is going to sound really bad. It's an excellent motivator, right? So they knew that they couldn't just go in and write crap. They actually had to write something with citations at the end, or someone was going to call them out on it. And they also were really proud at the end. They loved being able to like share the link with their mom. Mom, look at the project I worked on. So for me, my sort of main overarching big reason for doing this was engaging my engineers in history and in historical analysis. I have had some faculty resistance on my campus. They had legitimate concerns about Wikipedia, the editor's reliability and types of information. But honestly, once I talked them through my entire assignment, they love it. And so I've introduced several faculty to this assignment on my campus, and I know a couple of them have done it. And that is what I've got.
Okay, am I up? Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Turner, and I teach in the Department of English at University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. And my particular emphasis in the English department here is rhetorics of science, technology, and culture. That's the name of the program that I teach in. And because of that particular emphasis, I pretty much front load my Wikipedia assignment with the rhetorical principles that students have been studying since their first year writing course. So could we look at that next slide, and I can kind of run through those. So in my science writing course, which is where I teach Wikipedia, I have an interesting mix of English majors who are coming through our rhetorics program. I have computer science, I have biology, pre-med, allied health, environmental public health. I have some pre-engineering students. I have a really interesting mix, and I love the collaborative and cross-disciplinary conversations that can come up with that class. And so we talk about sort of rhetorically where people are coming from and their particular stake in their knowledge field. So I want it to be very clear to students that, say, English majors can pick a topic that's sciencey because it's a science writing course. And so that's where I want them to settle with topics, but that they can collaborate with the other more hard science majors in the class and develop some really good content that way. So the other way that I kind of front load the course with rhetorical principles is to look at the question of purpose and audience for Wikipedia, and just, first of all, get them to talk about their experiences of using Wikipedia and how, and then to think about what other people, what other users of Wikipedia are seeking, especially with regard to health information and mental health information. And to some extent, I think what happens is that they see the pressure on Wikipedia to really deliver reliable and useful content to people who are trying to answer some health-related questions. So we emphasize that at the beginning, and we talk about, what do readers need when they go to Wikipedia. One of the things that can often happen that students are interested in talking about from their own experience is the rabbit hole. So where did you end up when you looked up the Internet of Things? Where, you clicked on a few links and you ended up in looking at several other pages in Wikipedia. And then with that kind of concept, we can then get into the richness of the information environment that Wikipedia offers. And so one of the things that I emphasize in teaching the assignment is to create traffic within Wikipedia that can meaningfully help to build a user's experience and, kind of build out their knowledge with regard to the thing that they went there to find in the first place. So that's kind of how I set it up. Let's go to the next slide and see what's happening there. So this summer, I participated in a project that was a professional development opportunity to enrich the way I was teaching a certain course by bringing open access materials to the course. So first of all, we have Wikipedia, which is itself by definition an open access source. And then we have the question of how can we empower users who may have a need for more a deeper, more penetrating information about a topic. Let's say someone is interested in the functionality of the knee, the human knee joint, and they want to understand it in order to make a decision about whether to proceed with a surgery or something like that. So with regard then to the kinds of citations that we would use to support an article about the knee joint, how can we enable students to find open access materials that they can link to, so that in turn, users who go to that article can click through and actually look at original research or more. I think Wikipedia values more than single research articles, more like a lit review kind of article, where you're looking at sort of best practices in, say, meniscus tear repair or something like that. So we look at the kinds of sources, and I partnered with a librarian here at my campus who could help me to put together a library guide that would get students into Web of Science sources and really illustrate for them the value of open access science and technology related information through that particular database. So I have a course description here that kind of speaks to the sort of founding concept, a premise of the course is that everyone needs access to reliable information about scientific topics, including and especially information about human health. So I really do pitch it toward my human health sciences majors. And there's actually quite a bit of supportive documentation on Wikipedia about writing about human health in Wikipedia. So for that reason, one emphasis in the course is on how people, whether they're experts or not, find information reflecting the knowledge of experts, in other words, scientists and researchers. So I'm emphasizing the use of open access materials, such as research materials in the public domain or that have been released under an open license that permits no cost access, use, adaptation, and redistribution by others. So this was the emphasis in my most recent iteration of the course. And I think it's important to put out there to students that a best practice in writing for Wikipedia is to cite pretty much every sentence that you utter. Everything needs to be backed up with some kind of reliable source. So that's something that I think links up really well to the concept that I'm trying to convey here of open access sources. Let's see that next slide and see what. So deliverables. I used the dashboard that the others have talked about. We did quite a lot of training. There's a lot of scaffolding. The dashboard tool is brilliant. Before I discovered it, I was cobbling together my own sort of version of it, which was very inadequate by comparison to the dashboard. And so finally, and here's an interesting story that I share with my students, I was found out, as a sort of instructor maverick who was working with Wikipedia in her classroom, but not really linked up to Wiki education. And once I got connected to Helaine and a couple other people who were mentoring me, my teaching really improved, I think, because I didn't realize how many tools were available to me. So the learning outcomes for this particular iteration with regard to open access materials were to enable students to describe the barriers to accessing published research. So we emphasize in my class that as students paying tuition to attend college, they have a sort of privileged access to information that is not necessarily easily available to people who are outside of the university. And they do appreciate that, I think, because even for them sometimes trying to find access to a resource through our library databases that is not part of a subscription that we have here that we pay for, they have already experienced that frustration. So to describe those barriers, to articulate benefits to alternative publishing models that are like open access, like Wikipedia. So what are those benefits? As others have said, we've got other editors who are watching the pages and weighing in with their own edits. If for example, I might have half a dozen pages that I'm sort of monitoring because I'm interested in that topic and I've contributed a little bit to that page. And I notice other editors coming in and modifying the content. And so there's this very interesting collaborative environment that occurs when you realize that you're in this community of other people who are contributing. And then I want students to be able to find open access peer-reviewed research articles, and again, especially lit reviews, since they're not so hyper-focused and they're really talking about like what we know right now about things. And so thinking about that, the use of lit reviews in particular to support some of the content on Wikipedia, a student might encounter a page that seems to be like, okay, everything's here, what can I do with it? And I say, well, look at the sources and look at the dates and see if there's something that needs to be updated there. And they're just like, oh yeah, the most recent source is from 2017. Surely we've made progress on, meniscus tear surgery or whatever their topic happens to be. And sure enough, they're able to find something that they can bring to update the knowledge. And so one of the cool things, I don't think this has been touched on yet, is that Wikipedia may seem to have knowledge gaps, and indeed it does, but it also has chronological needs to be updated kind of thing. So that's something that really, I think, ignites students when they figure that out, because students are very interested in like the most recent thing. If I give them a source from 2017, they're like, this is old, so that's always fun to get them to realize the value of checking the dates on the sources. So let's look at that next slide. I think I've got some comments about this particular project with regard to the open access databases. A student said, I never had to be aware of where information came from on an open access page. Most articles or studies I've used for my previous papers require special access, since I'm in college and can get articles through the library or request access for free, like interlibrary loan, for example. It was not a concern I had before. The realization that there are so many scientific articles that the majority of people do not have access to surprises me. I do think that more, if not all, scientific articles need to be open access. I cannot justify in my head to have people paying for information that they may need in a serious situation, like having been diagnosed with a sight-threatening illness, which is a student who was writing about a vision problem. And then one more comment from students, next slide, is I do hope that Wikipedia continues to provide open access information for non-research-based searches. Wikipedia acts as a landing for many different web surfers when it comes to knowledge and learning something new or finding an answer to something. It is easily accessed and open to the world for anyone to view without charge, and edited by multiple eyes and hundreds of hands to provide accurate information. Wikipedia can be vital for answers on biofuel, in my case, and how biofuel is developed from animal fat or other organic matter. Seeing as it is open access, Wikipedia aids in learning and provides regular people with information that might not be easily understood through a scientific journal or peer-reviewed research. And so this is something else that we really emphasize in my science writing class, is that we've got expert knowledge and we need to translate it, if you will, for non-expert audiences. And that's really harder than it might seem on the surface. So I think that's pretty much all I'll say for now, so we can have some Q&A. And again, thank you to Helaine and the other presenters for putting this panel together.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Lisbeth. That was really excellent. I work with so many professors every semester, so it's really fun for me to hear like your individual experiences. Somebody had a question in here about, how do you prepare your students for potentially heated pushback from other Wikipedia editors? I can comment on that a little bit, but I wonder if you guys might, if any of you, how you get your students ready to, deal with people, to have interactions that are sort of outside of your control.
I can address that. I find I have to, as both Kathleen and was saying, it's like, if you have a lot of low stake assignments, then students are kind of getting comfortable with the medium. And I explain that there's this possibility. So we look at some interaction students would have had like in the previous semester, so that students are aware that I'm not really the audience, right? That there are these other Wikipedia editors. But I do think that it's hard. I think some students get upset when they get pushed back. But I mean, one thing that's nice is that Wikipedia has, and Helaine, you know, excellent information for like how to handle this sort of incident. And so I always, because I teach in small classes with like 15 at the most, I can really help students like navigate that and, you know, maybe respond back and forth, for example, on a talk page, if somebody doesn't agree with what the student is thinking about adding to the page. So I think there's a lot of structure that you can put into place, and then a lot of sort of talking through the process ahead of time so that they can have some skills in place to handle those sorts of situations.
Yeah.
Could I chime in
Oh,
with something?
yeah, go ahead. Go, yeah.
I
You
just
guys go.
quickly wanted to say that I am amazed at the generosity of most, I would say the vast majority of other people writing for Wikipedia are very understanding and want to help. And so I have had a couple of incidents that I think have empowered students in a way, because they have fallen back on the pillars of Wikipedia. For example, someone trying to bring some information about indigenous knowledge of a geographic formation to an article. And, you know, this is something that Wikipedia wants people to do, because we have a very Western centric, Eurocentric, you know, take for the most part. And so just enabling students to have that kind of exchange with someone else. I haven't had problems with people being mean or ungenerous with my students. I'm very glad about that too.
I have had those issues and with my students, and I've had those issues myself. So what I've done actually is just shared with my students, like, this happened to me one time and here's what I did about it. And that I think helps them to sort of know, oh, okay, that could happen to me. And if it does, then, you know, I feel open enough to go to my instructor and say, here's what happened. Can you help me? But I like Lisbeth was saying, you know, point them back to the 5 pillars and go into the talk page and do what you can. And, you know, basically don't give up trying to add your stuff if it's actually notable. And sometimes they'll bring me in and go, is this even the right thing to be adding here? And it has never not been the right thing. It's just always somebody coming in who has staked their claim on that piece or that section or whatever, not agreeing with whatever content. And so, you know, we do spend a lot of time talking about, you know, some problematic editors that might come in. Yeah, so I think just sharing and being open with them is really important.
Yeah, and I think just to back that up, like, we, you know, try to convey to students pretty early on in the process, like through our resources, right, that one of the pillars of Wikipedia is assuming good faith. And like, that is a really fundamental operating principle of Wikipedia, that, you know, assuming that everybody on that site is out there to make sure that Wikipedia is the best it can be. And, you know, just sometimes somebody might come off as brusque, and, you know, but just still underneath that brusqueness, trying to, you know, assuming that they're working in, you know, the best interest of Wikipedia goes a long way. Obviously, if there's abuse, if there's bullying, that is not allowed. That is not allowed on Wikipedia, and there are processes to handle that. And if students ever do run into like a more serious situation, that's absolutely a case where you guys, they should come immediately to us, and we can, you know, kind of see what's going on. I will say though, in the 8 years that I've been with this organization, that's happened incredibly, incredibly rarely. I think there was another question that just came in here. I just lost my chat. Oh, here we go. Okay. Have any of you, Stephanie, Elizabeth, or Kathleen, have you talked about the politics of Wikipedia kind of more broadly in your classes?
Yeah, I could start that one a little bit. So because most of my students are also men, and they're mostly white men, we talk about, does it matter who writes Wikipedia? And I remember asking that question at the beginning of the assignment this semester, and I had several people just kind of, no. And I said, really? Okay. And I think what they meant was, it doesn't, anyone can do it, right? These Gen Zs are just like, anybody can do it, and they absolutely can and should. But does it matter who is doing it? Yes, it absolutely matters. And so we talked about, what would it look like if only this group of people, if only people who liked Marvel movies wrote for Wikipedia, if only people who liked cheese wrote for Wikipedia, how would things look different if only one group did it? And so we kind of went through these different, really unrealistic scenarios, but and we talked about what kind of articles would show up and what kind of articles wouldn't be there. And so it's hard for me, especially in this in Central Missouri, to sort of talk about the politics of something, because that kind of is a knee-jerk reaction around here. But talking about talking about it in kind of a under a different guise is what we tried to do. And they were really receptive to the idea that, yeah, even though we're supposed to be unbiased, there can absolutely be biases in Wikipedia.
Yeah, and I would add to that since we do talk about objectivity and how it's an ideal rather than an actuality, we don't really get into the politics per se, but we get into the question of, like, we look at in the class and other assignments, how media frames certain science topics. Climate change, for example, can be discussed through an economics frame. So we talk about framing theory a little bit, and we look at how to navigate those tendencies to have a kind of way of presenting information in Wikipedia articles by, like, looking at other similar articles and to kind of make some comparisons about how they are treated in terms of the internal categories and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a great question. And one of the things that I talk about is anybody that has a biography or any sort of, commercial enterprise that has a page on Wikipedia, where's the objectivity if they're doing their own writing for that? That's a question that I think they can really see it's a problematic question for sure.
I would add too, because the current version of my class is all about the politics of representation on Wikipedia, but there's this concept of notability, that in order to have an article on Wikipedia, it has to be notable. And that's a concept that's really open to critique. So we can think about, like, who is considered notable. Like, there's it's been well covered in the news about, like, for example, there was a Black bird watcher who got her page deleted, and then it was put back, but because some people thought she wasn't notable. So there's all these judgments that get made about what should be in Wikipedia. And I think that becomes a really interesting area for students to examine some of this sort of politics of representation.
Okay, it looks like we do need to conclude. Thank you again to Elizabeth, to Kathleen, to Stephanie. Thank you so much for being here today, and for everybody for your great questions. I don't think there are a couple other questions, but please do visit teach.wiki.edu.org. That's where you'll find more information about this program, and please feel free to email me directly. It was here in the chat. I'm happy to answer any further questions via email. Thank you so much again to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And to Open Education for hosting this.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
Thank you so much.